cultivating forbearance. This is an important discipline in the group of 6 disciplines, collectively known as Shatkarma, 6 austerities or 6 virtues to be cultivated if we are seeking freedom from misery and suffering in human life. Shankaracharya has dedicated 14 couplets, 14 verses to this important topic of fortitude. We finished some of those last time and we shall continue from where we left last week. We did verse number 141, we will do 142 until 150, which is the end of this topic, and then the next virtue is taken up. So I'll read 142 and the translation. Sadhaneshvapi sarveshu titikshottama sadhanam yatra vignah palayante daivika api bhautika. In this verse, Shankaracharya is again emphasizing how important it is to cultivate this discipline, to remain equanimous in the face of numerous difficulties that are bound to arise in everybody's life. He says, of all the means available for spiritual liberation, fortitude is the noblest. Where there is fortitude, all the obstacles, both terrestrial and superterrestrial, vanish before it. He is indicating that if we cultivate this ability to withstand uncomplainingly all the difficulties that come our way in life, then all the obstacles in the path of our spiritual unfoldment will disappear. If they do not completely disappear, their intensity will be mitigated to a great extent. Earlier we have seen that all the misery that comes to us in this life can be traced to one of 3 sources. The ancient sages of India have classified the apparently innumerable types of problems that befall people into 3 major categories, depending upon the source from where these difficulties come. The first and probably the most important source of all problems is ourselves. These difficulties caused by our own body and our own mind, these are called Adhyatmika. Atma means one's own self. Adhyatmika means difficulties caused by ourselves. 99.9% of the problems that come to us are caused by ourselves. Though they may appear to come from outside, from other people, from circumstances over which we have no control, but still if we trace the root cause of these problems, it goes back to us. So these are Adhyatmika difficulties. The second source of problems are the surroundings, the environment, the people around us, other animals, plants and trees, nature. These also can create problems to us. These are called Adi Bhautika, Tapa. Tapa means suffering. The third source of problems is the superhuman or supernatural causes. Problems arising from natural calamities such as earthquake or floods or accidents due to changes in weather, climate, all of those things. So these are the 3 sources from where problems appear to come to us. But in reality, the problems come from us, from our own body and from our own mind. Swami Vivekananda has said, and this is borne out by the statements in the scriptures, that all difficulties are caused by us. Eventually, in the final analysis, the proximate cause of the problem may be somebody else. Somebody may come and take away our property. A pickpocket may come and take the purse away. But apparently, though the problem seems to come from some other person other than ourselves, if you trace the problem to the root cause, we ourselves are responsible for that calamity. Because whether we get good experiences or bad experiences in this life, All experiences that we go through are traced to our own samskaras. Every action, every word, every thought that passes our mind leaves an impression on the subconscious. And these impressions gather. The sum total of these impressions is called samskara. This is the content of the subconscious part of the mind. The subconscious mind, to a great extent, influences our present thinking and our present action. So all the experiences are because of that. Plus what we do now, our willpower, our ability to change the circumstances, plus an unknown, indeterminate factor which we may call the divine grace. So prayer helps. The Holy Mother, Sri Sharadamani Devi, said that though we cannot completely eliminate all problems from our lives, we can to a great extent hope to reduce their intensity, reduce the intensity of our suffering by means of prayer, by supplication to the Lord, to the personal aspect of God, to our chosen ideal. So this is an important point to bear in mind. So in any case, there will be some difficulties. Nobody can hope to go through the lives without any difficulty. Whether that person is an emperor or the richest man on earth or the most powerful person, it does not matter. There will always be problems. But we have to cultivate the ability to withstand and then concentrate our energy and time on the most important thing to be done in life, namely the achievement of salvation or liberation. The next verse, 143, also describes the importance of titiksha or forbearance. This is a sort of digression from the other verses in this group, because here Shankaracharya is saying that if one cultivates fortitude, forbearance, then all kinds of occult powers will come to that person. But this should not be our main concern. We don't cultivate forbearance in order to get occult powers, because as Sri Ramakrishna has said many times, the occult powers that may come to some people during the course of their spiritual practices are a source of great distraction. And if that person is not endowed with discrimination and renunciation, these powers will ruin that person, because that person will use these powers for self-aggrandizement, to impress people, to show off, and then that is the end of spiritual evolution. Then that person has to start from square one again. So we should never aspire for these powers, but if they come, we should offer them back at the feet of the Lord. Say, please take these powers back from us. That's what Sri Ramakrishna said. He didn't want any powers. He had all these powers, but he offered them back at the feet of the Divine Mother and said, I don't want any of these powers, because they are a great distraction in the path of our spiritual progress. So 143, Titikshoreva vignebhyas swanivartita chedasaha siddhyanti siddhayas sarva animadya samriddhaya. It is only he who is endowed with fortitude and who does not turn away from life's supreme goal of liberation, whatever obstacles may intervene, that attains all the supernatural powers such as anima and the like. In the Vedantic scriptures, 8 such supernatural powers or occult powers have been described. Those are the ability to become very small, as small as an atom, or the ability to become very large as a mountain. Hanuman had this power. Hanuman, the greatest devotee in the story of Ramayana, he could contract at will. Almost he could become invisible, or he could become as huge as a mountain. He had this power, but he never used this power for ulterior purposes. The ability to become extremely heavy or to become very light, the power to achieve what one desires, material prosperity and wealth, and the power to dominate over the minds of other people, lordship over all, the power to control other people and make them do what we want them to do, all of these things are simply tremendous distractions. Sri Ramakrishna explained in a very interesting parable how the Divine Mother places these things before us to test our renunciation. If we have not cultivated renunciation and love for the lotus feet of God, we will be simply fascinated and carried away by these powers, and then we will go in the opposite direction. To illustrate the distracting power of such occult powers, Sri Ramakrishna gave this interesting parable of a grain dealer who has a large warehouse. In that warehouse, he has stored a large quantity of grain. He wants to safeguard this grain from pests such as mice. So what the grain dealer does is he purchases very inexpensive puffed rice. Puffed rice is bulky and it is crunchy. So he scatters the puffed rice all around the real grain. When the mice come, they are attracted to this puffed rice and they start munching away at this puffed rice. And they munch away at the puffed rice all night, and in the morning, the security people come and they drive the mice away. They don't come during the daytime. So what the grain dealer has done is to distract the attention of the mice from the real thing, which is the grain, by giving them some cheap distraction. So all the wealth that comes to us, all the power, all the name and fame, the glory, the popularity that come to us in our lives are distractions. And we have to be wary of those. If you are carried away by these distractions, then we will not only not be able to make any progress in our quest for spiritual unfoldment, we will be traveling in the opposite direction. So this limitation has to be kept in mind while thinking about the occult powers. Sri Ramakrishna had another vision once. In that vision, mystic vision, it was clearly shown to him what the real nature of these occult powers was. He saw, when he was in the temple of Kali in Dakshineshwar, he saw a lady figure, the figure of a woman. The whole body of that feminine figure was covered with unspeakable filth. And then he was thinking, what is the purpose of this vision? It was revealed to him that this is the true nature of all occult powers. It is as worthless, as demeaning, as dangerous as that filth. So from that time onwards, he offered back at the feet of the Divine Mother all the occult powers that he had. He never used them for any purpose. So that we have to remember in studying this verse. In the next verse, 144, Shankaracharya gives us some hints on how to cultivate titiksha, forbearance. So far, the importance of forbearance as a discipline, as an austerity, has been discussed. Now he gives us two hints on how to cultivate titiksha, the ability to withstand the inevitable suffering that comes to everybody in human life. Tasman mamokshor adhika titiksha sampadiniye psita karya siddhiyai tivra mamoksha cha mahatyupeksha jobhe titiksha sahakari karanam. He gives two hints in this verse, 144. Therefore, the aspirant after liberation should attain fortitude in full measure. This attainment is facilitated by the earnest desire for liberation and by intense dispassion. We have to cultivate or intensify our mumukshutva, the desire for liberation. Everybody has desire for liberation, but in most cases it is very weak and vague. That has to be intensified to such an extent that we don't want to do anything else in life but seek liberation. We can remember in this context the parable of the teacher who submerged the student's head underwater when the student was asking why he was not making progress in his spiritual quest. If we have that much of urge to realize our true blissful nature, then we can make progress. That is what Sri Ramakrishna said. So we have to intensify our liberation to such a degree that all other distracting activities in our daily lives become so distasteful that we don't want to spend any energy or time pursuing those activities. The only thing that should matter to us is this one supreme goal of human life. That one pointed endeavor should be achieved, attained. Then liberation is possible. So that is one. Mumuksha, tivra mumuksha, intense desire for liberation should be achieved first of all. Then titiksha will automatically come. Then all the sufferings will not matter at all. We will just brush them aside. We don't dwell on those sufferings. We say this is something to be put up with because of our own prarabdha karma. I have earned it. If I had not paved the way myself, this would not have come to me, whether it is a good experience or a bad experience. So why should I waste my time and energy just bewailing this misfortune, which I have brought myself upon myself? So those things do not matter. We suffer, we put up with them, and then we concentrate our minds and energy on the one supreme goal of life. So the mumukshutva is the one that enables us to cultivate titiksha, forbearance. The second austerity that enhances the ability to withstand difficulties in life is upeksha, renunciation. It is the root cause of all sufferings is desire. This has been made very clear in the Bhagavad Gita, where Sri Krishna has said in response to a question from Arjuna, Arjuna asks him, why do people suffer this much in the world? Then Sri Krishna says, all the suffering in the human life can be traced to two weaknesses that all people have to varying degrees. And these weaknesses are kama and krodha. The desire for something that is pleasant, any kind of pleasant experience we want to have through the senses, that is kama. Krodha is anger. When that is blocked, when the desire is blocked, or we are unable to realize that experience, that desire, then frustration sets in, anger sets in, and we commit more mistakes. So all the difficulties that we bring upon ourselves can be traced to these two weaknesses that most people, everybody has to some extent, to more or less extent. Kama and krodha, desire and anger. So ultimately, who is responsible for all the problems? Ourselves. Nobody else brings us difficulties. We ourselves bring upon the misfortune, the difficulties that come to us in our life. So this thing we have to keep in mind. But if you want to reduce the problems, the intensity of suffering, we have to go to the root cause. We have to curb our desires. We have to reason. Not suppress, but we have to reason. Sublimate our desires. We should ask ourselves, what is the good of this pleasurable experience? How long will it last? What is the price? What do I have to pay in order to get this pleasurable experience? If there is no price that is apparent, it will follow. If it is not clear, it will be hidden. What will happen after I go through this experience? Do I suffer from some disease, or do I have to pay for it in some other way? If you examine carefully, all pleasurable experiences always come with a price tag, whether apparent or hidden. So by means of reasoning like this, and by rejecting all experiences which are not worthwhile, which only bring temporary happiness and always at a price, we can reduce the intensity of our desire. That way we can reduce the problems that we run into. So this is a very important hint that Shankaracharya is giving on how to cultivate titiksha, the ability to forbear. We go to the root cause of difficulties and then we reduce them there. So the manifestation will be less intense in our lives. So intensify the desire for liberation, mumukshutva, and intensify our renunciation. In another book called Viveka Chodamani, also by Shankaracharya, he has given some more indication on how to cultivate or intensify mumukshutva. We all know how important mumukshutva is, but how to intensify the desire for liberation? And then Shankaracharya says in the Viveka Chodamani, Manda Madhyama Rupapi vairagyena shamadina prasadena gurosyayam pravriddha suyate phalam. Even if the desire for liberation is very mild in some person's case, it can be made more intense. How? By vairagya, by cultivating renunciation, by reasoning. All these things that I am after in life, all the pleasurable experiences are not worthwhile. We have to ask ourselves, is it worthwhile? What is the price? Should I go after this? What happens after that? We have to question constantly before we jump into any situation in quest of happiness and pleasure. So vairagyena. The second thing is shamadina. That's what we are studying now, shama. Shama, dhamma, titeksha, upariti, shraddha, samadhana. The 6 disciplines, the group of 6 disciplines. If you practice them, then mumukshutva will become stronger. Then one more factor is very important. Prasadena guru seyam. Guroho prasadena. By the grace of the teacher. We have to take refuge in a spiritual teacher and seek his or her help in intensifying our desire for liberation. Prasadena guru seyam pravriddha. It will become stronger. The mumukshutva, the desire for liberation will become stronger. Suvyate phalam. It will bear fruit. Moksha will come, liberation will come. By doing these 3 things. By cultivating renunciation, vairagya, by practicing the 6-fold austerities, and then by seeking the grace of a teacher. This way we can intensify our desire for liberation. And that will enable us to withstand or to just disregard the difficulties that will come in our lives. Now, we see that it goes back to the same 6 disciplines that we are studying. So this simply means that all of these austerities have to be practiced in concert. You cannot say, for the first 3 months I will practice shama, control of the mind, and then when I achieve that one, for the next 6 months I will practice dhamma, control of the senses, withdrawal of the senses from the sense objects, and then I shall go to the 3rd discipline, and then after 2 years I will go to the 4th discipline. This will not work. All of these disciplines are inseparably interrelated. They are mutually interdependent. You cannot practice vairagya without shama and dhamma. You cannot intensify mumukshutva without practicing the 6 disciplines. They are all interrelated. So these have to be practiced all at the same time. So this is the key to gain the ability to withstand the inevitable vicissitudes that life brings in everybody's case. What should be the attitude of a spiritual seeker to the difficulties that come in our lives? This question is answered in the next verse, 145. This is a very big verse in a different meter, so I'll read from the book. 145. Tat kala samagata mayatate shantyai pravritto yadi syat tat parihara kaushadharasas tat chintane tat parah tad bhikshu shravanadi dharma rahito bhutva mritaschet tatah kim siddham phalamapnayad bhayatha prashto bhavet sarvatah. This is 145. The translation of this: of what avail is it if a sannyasin should abandon his swadharma, his own duty, that of hankering to the Vedas, and waste his time in worrying himself over the various ailments to which his body may be subject, and in gathering medicines to cure them? Such a person loses both here and hereafter. Here Shankaracharya describes the plight of a spiritual seeker, a monk or a nun, who, instead of occupying the time and energy in contemplation on the true nature of the self, spends all the time in tending the body, in worrying about how to make the body more comfortable and how to get pleasurable experiences and how to ward off the difficulties that come. This kind of preoccupation will be greatly distracting, debilitating to the spiritual seeker. In another book, in the Viveka Chodamani, Shankaracharya has further explained what the attitude of a monk or nun should be towards the inevitable suffering that comes in everybody's life. Bodily suffering, discomfort, disease, like that. So there Shankaracharya says, Jalevapi sthalevapi lutattvesha jadatmakaha naham vilipyetat dharmai ghatadarmai nabhoyatha. Ghata means a pot. In many of the Vedantic books, the individual's personality is compared to an empty pot. That pot contains air within, or space within, and there is space outside the pot too. There is no difference between the space enclosed within the pot and the space outside the pot. But the pot seems to think that I am independent, and then everything outside me is different from me. That is the way we are assuming ourselves to be. Each one of us think that we are an independent, isolated entity, separate from everybody else and everything else in this universe, and we claim an independent existence. An autonomy is claimed for our existence, which is really not there. So the pot is taken as an entity to be compared with that notion of personality, individual personality. So the monk should assert like this: Jalevapi, let this body fall in water. Sthalevapi, let it fall on the ground. Luthatu esha jadatmakaha. Jadatmaka means this is the insentient being. By itself, this body has no existence, independent existence. It has no autonomy. It has no power. It's only the cosmic energy that flows through the body that makes it look like an independent, autonomous entity, that gives it power, that actuates it. So by itself, it has no independent existence, except as imagined by the jiva. Esha jadatmakaha, this insentient thing, which we call the body, in the mind also, luthatu, let it fall, either on the ground or in water, anywhere, it does not matter. Naham vilipye, I am never affected. Aham, the true self, the Atman, Naham vilipye, I am never affected by what happens to the body. Ghatadarmai nabhoyata, whatever happens to the empty pot, suspended in space, it does not affect in the least bit the outer space. What happens to the outer space? When the pot is broken, the space remains the same. And the pot is intact, the space remains the same. If the pot is painted red color, with red color, it does not affect the space. If the pot is cut into 2 or into 20 pieces, nothing happens to the space. Whatever happens to the pot, the space in which it exists, is totally unaffected. That self is like the outer space, and the pot is the assumed independent personality that we nurture. So whatever happens to the body and to the mind, it does not affect me in the least. So why should I pay attention to the sufferings that come to my lot in life? This is the affirmation that the monk or spiritual aspirant should constantly keep in mind. This is a very important hint that Shankaracharya has given in the Viveka Chudamani. That has to be read with the other verses in this section of this book. In the next verse, 146, Shankaracharya describes what happens when a monk who strives after realization somehow fails, either because of wavering from the goal or because of insufficient effort. For whatever reason, if that person does not achieve the ultimate goal of human life, in spite of determined effort, then what happens to such a person? That question arises, and then Shankaracharya answers that question. Yogamabhyasyato bhiksho yoga chalita chetasaha prapya punyakratan lokan ityadi prahakeshavaha. Here, Shankaracharya has simply drawn our attention to a similar question that arose in the Bhagavad Gita. Ityadi praha Keshava. Keshava is a name of Sri Krishna. He is simply referring us to the appropriate section in the Bhagavad Gita where Sri Krishna has answered this same question that was brought up by Arjuna. So 146. But the sannyasis who strive after communion with Brahman, even if they should deviate from their resolve, attain the regions of the blessed, as the Lord Keshava proclaims. in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, Arjuna brings up this question. And then Sri Krishna gives a fairly detailed answer to this question. What happens when the yogi or spiritual seeker does not for some reason succeed in achieving the goal? Then he says that he will be either born as in a good family with good tendencies and will pick up from where he left. In this endeavor of spiritual quest, to realize one's true nature, there is no wasted effort. Even the smallest effort that is put forth by the aspirant will yield result. Nothing is wasted in this line. In other secular fields of activity, there may be disappointment. Wasted effort is not uncommon. We may forget things. If you acquire knowledge of a certain branch of science or art or some other secular branch of knowledge, if you don't practice it, if you don't work hard to keep it, it will be lost. A language may be forgotten, even if you have learned it, even if you have mastered the language. If you don't use it for some time, you will forget it. Then you have to start from the beginning. Not so in the case of spiritual endeavor. Even the smallest effort put forth in this line of activity will stay. It will all be cumulative. It will add up. Nothing is wasted. So Sri Krishna answers this question, and Shankaracharya simply draws our attention to that part of the Bhagavad Gita where this question has been discussed. This is chapter 6, verses 37 to 44 in the Bhagavad Gita. Another question that may arise in this context is, because Sri Krishna has given this assurance that nothing goes waste in this endeavor, in the spiritual quest, is it not sufficient if somebody just formally accepts sannyasa or just belongs to a monastery in a formal way and then does not do anything else? That will not give us the desired result. A formal declaration, a verbal, a formal declaration of intention to make progress in this field is not enough. Actual effort is necessary, and that point is brought up in the next verse, 147. Natu kritvaiva sannyasam tushnimeva mritasya hi punyalokagatim brute bhagavan nyasamatrataha. 147. But the Lord does not say that merely by virtue of one's formal sannyasa, anyone does nothing else might attain after his death those happy regions that are reserved for the blessed. It is not sufficient just to declare one's intention to make progress. It is essential that we actually put forth the effort. That's why all these austerities are described in considerable detail in this book and in other books on Vedantic instruction. Sannyasa does not mean inaction. Again, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the same chapter 6, Sri Krishna says that we have to do the duties enjoined upon us in the scriptures, duties that are appropriate to our station in life. This is called Swadharma. Even for sannyasis, there are duties prescribed, and they have to do. It does not mean that if one becomes a sannyasi, he or she can just remain quiet because I have become a sannyasi. It's not enough. In the 6th chapter, the first verse in the 6th chapter, Sri Krishna emphasizes the need for action, intelligent, informed action, performance of one's duties. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sasanyasi cha yogi cha na niragdirna cha kriya. Who is a real sannyasi? Who is a real yogi? He or she is a real yogi or a sannyasi who performs the appropriate duties enjoined upon by the scriptures. Duties appropriate to that particular station in life. Nacha kriyaha. If we do not perform action, then it does not mean anything. We have to perform the duties with utmost proficiency we are capable of. Then only some progress is possible. So titiksha does not mean remaining inactive. In an attempt to escape the difficulties of life, there may be a certain tendency in some people to remain inactive. If I don't try for anything, then I won't run into any problems. If I don't walk, then I don't fall. That's not a logical argument. If you don't walk, you don't make any progress either. That's why this verse came here. There is no sense in resorting to inactivity in order to escape difficulties in life. That's why Shankaracharya put in that idea here. Titiksha does not mean remaining inactive. We have to be active, we have to be performing our duties in the face of odds and difficulties. Otherwise, if we don't put forth our effort, if we don't perform our duties required of us, then we will not be making any progress. We stay where we are. So sannyasa does not mean inactivity. That point has been brought up here and also in the Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter, in the very first verse. Again in 148, in the next verse, Shankaracharya emphasizes the need for informed action. And here also he just takes a whole line from the Bhagavad Gita and then quotes it. Nacha sanyasana deva siddhim samadhigacchati ityanushtaya santyagat siddhya bhava uvachacha. The first line here, Nacha sanyasana deva siddhim samadhigacchati, is taken from the Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, 4th verse. It means, just by becoming a sannyasi formally, one does not attain perfection. Na siddhim samadhigacchati. Siddhi, perfection, does not come just by merely becoming a sannyasi or becoming a member of a monastery or something like that. We have to perform the action. The swadharma has to be performed, and that point is emphasized here. We'll go to the next verse, 149. 2 more verses and that this section will be complete. Here in verse 149, Shankaracharya again gives some more suggestions on how to cultivate titiksha. Tasmat titikshaya sodva tattadukhamabhagatam kuryat shakya rupena shravanadishanai. 149. It is therefore imperative that by the practice of fortitude one should conquer such sorrow as falls to one's lot. One should then step by step direct one's attention to such disciplines as listening to the Shruti according to the measure of one's ability. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the sage Yajnavalkya has given 3 steps, the famous 3 steps towards self-realization. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Atma va are shrotavya mantavya nididhyasitavya maitreyi, like that Yajnavalkya says. Shravana is the first step. That is what we are doing now. We are studying the scriptures. Shravana is a study of scriptures because that's from where we get the information to act upon. But study of scriptures is not enough. We have to study the scriptures and grasp the essence of the scriptures and put them into practice in our lives. And contemplate upon the truths described by the sages, achieved in their revelations in the scriptures, as revealed in the scriptures. So these are the 3 steps, and Shruti or Shravana is the first step. By putting our effort in this direction, in Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, in the study of scriptures, in contemplating upon these truths given in the scriptures, and in putting them into practice, we will be disregarding the difficulties that come. This is a very powerful antidote to any difficulty that may come, because everything else will just become so insignificant. It does not mean that the difficulties will go away. Prarabdha will act anyhow. Whether we suffer from it or not, the events have to take place. Because Prarabdha, as we saw earlier, last week, is like an arrow shot from a bow. It has to reach its target. We can only mitigate its intensity by means of prayer, as the Holy Mother suggested, or by other means as suggested by Shankaracharya. Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana. By contemplation on the true, blissful, infinite nature of one's true self. The last verse in this section dealing with titiksha is 150. Here Shankaracharya concludes this section by once again pointing out the purpose of cultivating forbearance. Prayojanam titikshaya sadhitaya prayatnatah prapta dukkha sahishnutve nakinchadipi drishyate. What is the use of acquiring fortitude with great effort if one could not endure such affliction as falls to one's lot? The true purpose of cultivating titiksha is to endure the inevitable difficulties that may come through any of the three sources mentioned earlier. Adhyatmika, difficulties caused by our own body and mind. Adi Bhautika, difficulties that come from the surroundings, other people, animals, plants and trees. Adi Daivika, supernatural causes. Because the ultimate cause of all difficulties is the self, one's own body and mind. So if you keep that in mind, it becomes a little easier to bear these difficulties. So the purpose of practicing these austerities is to withstand the inevitable vicissitudes in life, so that one can concentrate on contemplation on the self, instead of wasting one's time and energy in patchwork solutions. Because all the solutions, as we saw earlier, to the problems that come in our lives, solutions offered by secular means, by means of influencing other people, by manipulating the resources that we have, the mental and physical resources that we have, all of these solutions are only patchwork solutions at best. Because in the wake of each solution, a new problem comes. It always comes with a seed already implanted in it for a new problem. This we saw earlier. So instead of wasting our energy and time in attempting these patchwork solutions, partial solutions, why not just try to transcend the problems altogether? Then whatever happens to the body and the mind, we will not be affected by those happenings. Now, how is this possible? Is it really an achievable goal, or is it an ideal that is simply there for us to ponder? Can we really achieve this? That's the question. The answer is yes, but it takes a lot of effort. Now, let us take 3 instances. In the life of Sri Ramachandra, whose birthday we are celebrating next week, next Tuesday, we see in practice titiksha, practiced in the fullest measure. On the eve of his coronation, when he was to be made the emperor, the news was conveyed to him that tomorrow your coronation is going to take place and you will become the emperor, and your father, Emperor Dasharatha, will take Vanaprastha-ashrama. He will spend the rest of his life in contemplation, preparing for sannyasa. So you will have to assume the responsibilities for the whole empire. Greatest news. What better news can there be for a prince? That he is going to be coronated next day and he will become the emperor of the vast empire. When that glad tidings were conveyed to Sri Ramachandra, what did he do? How did he react? He said, it is all right. It's a duty I have to do. He did not show any sign of undue elation. And on the same day, a few hours later, the whole thing changed. The picture changed drastically. By a twist of fate, as it were, he was required to go to the forest for 14 years. This is the story of the Ramayana. Then what happened when this worst shocking news was conveyed to Sri Ramachandra? Did he flinch? Did he become angry? Bitter? Nothing. He just remained calm, unperturbed. He said, yes, I will go to the forest and just fulfill the promise made by my father to my mother Kaikeyi. When we sing Ramanam, there is a verse that we sing in praise of Lord Ramachandra, and I will read that verse. Prasannatam yanagatabhishekada tatha namamle vanavasa dukkhataha mukhambuja shri raghunandanasya me sadastu sa manjula mangala prada. This verse says, may the lotus-like face of Sri Rama, Mukhambuja Shri, Ambuja is a lotus flower. His mukha, his face is like a lotus flower, as beautiful as a lotus flower. Such a face, pleasant face of Sri Rama, Lord Ramachandra, which did not show signs of undue elation when his coronation was announced. Gatabhishekataha na prasannatam. When the Abhisheka was announced, coronation was announced, he didn't show any great signs of elation. He didn't jump out of joy, oh, I am going to become the emperor tomorrow. He remained equanimous. Or the slightest sign of distress when he was required to go to forest for 14 years. Tatha namamle vanavasa dukkhata. Vanavasa is the life in the forest. Vanavasa dukkha is the misery that comes in the forest. Tatha namamle. It didn't show any sign of unhappiness. Not even a flinch. Not in the least did he show that he was unhappy. Not only showing he was not unhappy, really there was no such feeling. He accepted it. The same equanimity with which he accepted the news of becoming an emperor. Such a lotus face of Lord Ramachandra, sada, always, sa manjula mangala prada. Let such a lotus face of Sri Ramachandra give us auspiciousness always. This is the prayer that we say when we sing Ramnam. So this is Sri Ramachandra's life, when he showed acceptance, whether it is good or bad. What can be better than becoming the emperor? Or what can be worse than having to go to the forest for 14 years? All in the same day. No change. Accept everything as it comes, good or bad. This is Titiksha. Now the question might arise, it was alright for Sri Ramachandra. He was the incarnation of God. He was absolute in human form. He can do these things. Can we as ordinary people do these things? Can we remain so unaffected as they remained unaffected? Two more examples in the lives of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. One in the life of Swami Trigunathitananda. He was the monk in charge of the Vedanta Society of Northern California in San Francisco, the beginning of this century. One day when he was giving a class, a sermon, one mentally deranged devotee, he threw a bomb at this Swami. Eventually, the Swami died out of that accident. But the only thought that came to his mind when he suffered that injury was about the person who threw the bomb. He asked his attendants who were taking him to the hospital, what happened to him? Don't punish him. Be kind to him. He did not know what he was doing. This was the thought that crossed his mind. He did not become angry. He died after that. But still there was no anger. He accepted it. So he practiced the Diksha. To the next extent, nothing mattered. Even if the life goes, let it go. As Shankaracharya said in the Viveka Chudamani, Jalevapi sthalevapi. May this body fall in water or on the ground. Naham milipyetat dharmai. I remain totally unaffected by whatever happens to the body or the mind, just as the outer space remains unaffected by whatever happens to the part in the space. Whether a part is broken or kept intact, or painted white or red, what happens to space? In the same way, I remain unaffected, no matter what happens to the body and to the mind. That should be the affirmation of the monk. And Swami Trigunathitananda showed that kind of consciousness in his life. A second incident in the life of Swami Turiyananda, another one of the 16 disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. He was also in San Francisco. When he went back to India, he had to suffer a great deal of physical ailment. I'll read a paragraph from his biography. This biography is called Swami Turiyananda, a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, written by Swami Ritajananda. Swami Turiyananda's frequent illness and the appearance of what seemed to be boils on his body caused the doctors to suspect some deeper infection. They found that his diabetic condition was leading to blood poisoning, and they diagnosed the swellings as carbuncles. They suggested surgery. To perform the operation, a doctor was sent to Puri. Swami Sharadananda, Gurudas was Swami Atulananda, one of the foreign monks who was in India. And Dr. De Mello also went to be near Turiyananda. It was then the latter part of October 1917. The doctor wanted to administer chloroform before surgery, but Turiyananda refused the anesthetic and underwent the operation in full consciousness by voluntarily detaching his mind from the body. This is a concrete example of how we can bear any difficulty, even if the body is cut. As Buddha said, one should remain unaffected, should not flinch. How can one achieve that consciousness? How can we succeed in withdrawing the consciousness from the body, which is the root cause of all the difficulties in human life, the body consciousness, by means of austerities? Swami Turiyananda used to recite the whole of Bhagavad Gita and the Chandi and everything every day before taking the first meal. He was a very orthodox person. Intense spiritual austerities he did from early in his life. So we have to read his life. And the lives of these great saints, sages, incarnations, they give us the inspiration, the motivation to practice the Diksha. Right now we are not there, but incidents like this in the lives of disciples of Sri Ramakrishna show us, demonstrate to us the feasibility of these practices. It is not theoretical. It is possible. It takes a lot of hard work, but it is achievable. So this is the section we just now concluded on Titiksha or forbearance in this book, The Quintessence of Vedanta by Shankaracharya. And the next section with verse 151 will begin with Upariti, the next discipline, the next of the 6 disciplines. Then we shall continue that later on next week. Thank you.